Welcome back to another Friday altcoin update. Phil, head of research with Morales here, and today we're again learning how to make more money in the altcoin markets. Whether that means participating in the right protocols, finding tokens before other people, or even earning tokens for free as we explore the depths of what's out there. This week, optimistic roll-up L2s are absorbing total value locked like never before. Today, we're covering the top Layer 2 networks in the world, focusing hard on Arbitrum and Optimism, both which have issued major airdrops in the past year and have a lot of exciting things going on. Let's take a look. Starting off today, we're going to take a look at the top 5 Layer 2 coins as measured by CoinGecko. So here we see that we've got Polygon, Arbitrum, Immutable X, Optimism, and Loopring. Now let's start to break these down into groups a little bit. Polygon, as we mentioned in our previous video, does now support a ZK rollup L2. And in addition to that, Loopring is also a ZK rollup solution. Now, Immutable X is a little bit different than the others in the group, because Immutable X is a layer 2 that focuses on gaming utility. And as a result, they're home to some of the most popular Web3 games available today, including Gods Unchained, which has been around for several years now. Now, the only issue that I see with this chain and the projects on it is that gaming in Web3 still has yet to reach the level of mainstream gaming. Once the experience of Web3 gaming is able to match that of what we see in mainstream gaming, both in terms of game experience and in terms of getting started, then we might see some major movements in that realm. Finally, the value proposition for Immutable X IMX holders is being able to hold a piece of the ecosystem before it goes mainstream. Unfortunately, DeFi within the ecosystem is rather limited or non-existent. This leaves us with Arbitrum and Optimism, both optimistic roll-up layer 2 solutions. And maybe even more interesting, both of these assets have recently issued a large airdrop to the network users. When looking at these L2s, it's hard to find ecosystems with more excitement and active development than Optimism and Arbitrum. So let's dive deep on those two and see what we come up with. Taking a look first at Arbitrum, we see that while the launch price was quite inflated at over $5, the consolidated price of about $1.25 to $1.40 has been maintained reasonably well since launch. In fact, today we're sitting at a per token price of $1.41, very close to that consolidation price. The situation is similar when looking at Optimism, where we have a $2.15 per token price. And if we look at the max time frame, we see that the airdrop occurred back in May of last year. And since then, we have had some appreciation, but largely sideways movements since the start of the year. In fact, if we look at the 90-day time frame, we can see that the price early in January at around $2.20 is very close to where we are right now. If we take a look at the chains breakdown over at DeFi Llama, we see that 3 of the chains in the top 5 L2s are tracked by DeFi Llama, specifically Arbitrum, Polygon, and Optimism. Interestingly, Arbitrum is hosting more total value locked right now than Polygon, which is a recent change. If we look back to only January of this year, we see that Polygon was leading with a higher percentage of the total value locked worldwide than Arbitrum. So if you're like me, you're thinking, man, token price is great, but what about the dApps on the network? What about the real movers that are bringing energy and activity to these ecosystems? Well, let's look at those next. Here, taking a look at the Arbitrum dApp breakdown and honing in on the top 5 protocols, we see that we have 2 exchange protocols, Uniswap, which we talked about in a previous week, and GMX. Now, GMX is interesting because using GMX is a complete experience, actually rather similar to something like Bybit, which recently introduced KYC. As a result, this may be an interesting option for people who need something other than that. Using the platform, we can exercise leverage trades. And in this case, we're going to take a $10 long position with 5x leverage on Bitcoin in the hopes that this trend here continues. First, we need to select Enable Leverage. Once confirmed with our wallet, we're given the option to approve the asset that we want to contribute to the protocol. In this case, our $10 in USDC. With that approved, we now have the option to long BTC. Taking note here of the parameters, we are contributing $10 in USDC to produce a $50 long position using 5x leverage. What does this mean? This means that if the price dips to $26,344.35, we will be liquidated and we will lose assets. But if the price continues to go up, we're in great shape. Selecting confirm processes the transaction. We're going to go ahead and leave this open for now as we continue with today's exploration of Optimism and Arbitrum. Of course, unlike Bybit and other centralized platforms, in this case, we're actually performing all of the steps on-chain using our own sovereign wallet. So certainly something to check out there if you're interested in this style of trading experience. Also on the list, we have Radiant, with quickly growing total value locked, now exceeding $250 million. Here we see that Radiant is a lending protocol offering a wide array of lending options, including the Arbitrum governance asset. Definitely something to look into if you're holding ARB, and likely the reason why it's seeing so much success within the ecosystem right now. Finally, we have Stargate, a bridge protocol, and Aave, another lending protocol, actually the largest lending protocol in the world. Looking next at the Optimism ecosystem, and again focusing on the top 5 protocols, we again see Uniswap, as mentioned, and Aave, as well as another AMM protocol. This time, one that is offering a new form of governance in which you can earn assets on the basis of voting for particular liquidity pools. Beefy Finance is the #1 yield aggregator in the world. It's effective at taking positions which are earning positions and compounding the interest for you automatically. In order to access that, you have to access the pools through the Beefy protocol. Again, we're seeing a good selection of both lending and exchange options. And then finally, an interesting one, Synthetics. Now, Synthetics protocol originally started on the Ethereum mainnet. And because fees became so high, it migrated over to Optimism. Functions are still available on the Ethereum mainnet as well, though. This protocol is actually the basis for one of the most successful stablecoins of all time. And I say that because it's a stablecoin which more often than not does a good job of staying on peg, and when not on peg is sometimes above the value of $1. Here we see that today it is exactly at the value of the dollar. This is SUSD produced through Synthetics protocol, and zooming out to the max time frame, what we see is a relatively strong peg to the dollar. If we consider that this is an entirely algorithmic stablecoin and then compare it to something which has failed to maintain its peg, such as USTC at 2 cents today, we can see a staunch difference in the way that these assets have performed. Synthetics protocol is also responsible for producing a series of other synthetic assets, each stable to the asset that they are named after, but produced through the protocol. So we should consider that each of these are not wrapped tokens, but virtual representations of the same price peg as the asset they're mirroring. So with Optimism and Arbitrum, we've got 2 networks emerging fast and producing new results with brand new dApps that have only hit the scene recently. But what do we see that's in common between the 2 networks? Lots of lending and lots of exchange. Why do the combination of these 2 matter? Let's find out. When interacting with a lending protocol, we have basically 2 options. On the one hand, we can contribute our assets to the lending pool, and then we'll earn a percentage interest. On the other hand, we can borrow from the lending pool. Well, why would we want to borrow from the lending pool? Well, if we're bearish on an asset, we can borrow that asset, then sell it, then rebuy it at a lower price, and the difference between the price we sold it at and the price we rebought it at is profit. Now, in order to participate in these lending pools, we need to provide collateral to the pool. In either case, we're either going to earn directly from that collateral, or we're going to use that collateral in order to access a loan from the other side. When performing functions like this, taking assets from one protocol and putting them either into a lending protocol or even a liquidity pool or another type of contract, we're absorbing additional risk. That additional risk can equate to additional reward so long as the risk parameters are not realized. In this next section, I'm going to show you some higher risk lending protocols. The reason why is these higher risk lending protocols are not being used as heavily as the options that we already looked at. Higher risk may mean higher reward. Let's take a look at Tender Finance next. Once on tender.fi, we can see that there are lending and borrowing options for the ARB asset. It should be understood that when participating in these protocols, not only do we receive Arbitrum assets, but we also receive a percentage of our assets in utility tokens. These utility tokens have their own market rate, and right now, the TND asset provided by TenderFi trades at $1.87. With a very low ranking and equally low market cap, this is a high-risk asset that is going to be much more risk off to earn than it will be to buy on the open market. That's why participating with our Arbitrum assets during a time period where we would just be holding them without earning anything may be an interesting value proposition for us. In the case of Optimism, we went through similar steps in order to identify the best lending options available on that network. Honing in specifically on Sone Finance, found at sone.finance, provides similar options to what we found over on TenderFi, but this time for OP assets rather than ARB. Again, we have a separate supply APY and reward APR. The reward APR speaks in terms of the governance assets that you would be receiving for Sone protocol if you participate in lending or borrowing. Notice that the borrow rate is actually much higher than the lending rate. This is to incentivize users to take loans from the protocol over providing collateral, though providing collateral is often considered a more risk-off endeavor than shorting the asset through loans. Well, there you have it. We explored a couple of interesting options for earning with our dormant assets while we wait for major appreciation in the next cycle. We also explored some ways that we can get even more aggressive with this by targeting protocols that haven't had major success yet within the ecosystem. If you're interested in limiting your risk, it's probably a better idea to stick to those higher total value locked protocols. This is for two reasons. Number one, they're being more heavily tested by the community based on the amount of dollars or value in dollars that they're holding. Also, the likelihood that you'll be made whole if there ever is a problem with the protocol is a lot higher on major protocols. If the protocol is hacked for, say, $100 million, then they have heavy motivation to pay back those investors. However, if a protocol that is only holding $100,000 is lost, it's possible that they may just shut their doors and never really try to make restitution in any way. Within Optimism and Arbitrum, there's a full array of risk that you can either opt into or not, and it has to do with which protocols you're looking to participate in. With some of those, you'll earn a lot of assets with not a lot of value. In other ones, you're going to earn some high value assets, but only a little bit at a time. And it all depends on the rate and the incentives that are being provided by that particular protocol. One thing that I do is that I try to match the strategy that I'm executing to the protocol that I'm using. If I'm planning on shorting an asset, it's great when then the rewards are higher on the borrowing side. Granted, if I'm not interested in borrowing, it's great when the rewards are better on the lending side. And those types of things can help you make a decision on which one is the right protocol for you. See everybody in the next Friday update.